Well, I didn't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to watch Elon spouting out about what he was doing, but I did as soon as I woke up, just catch up on everything that's happening, and what has happened is quite fascinating. I'm Dave, welcome to Dave Takes It On. Well, the first thing, I'm not going to go through everything that he did, but I'm just going to set the scene and give you a taste of what he was talking about, because this will impact us all. One of the very first things he said when he stood up on the stage in front of the audience, and it wasn't a huge long speech, by the way, it wasn't that long an event, he said the average car in the world is used 10 hours a week, and there are 168 hours in each week. And it's a total, complete waste of time and money to pay for a car for 168 hours because you own it, that you're only going to use 10 hours. And some of that 10 hours is probably parked in a car park and you're actually paying to park it. So it's a crazy situation. So what he's saying is that that car could be much more useful than it is at the moment. Instead of being parked for 158 hours each week doing nothing, you might be able to get some use out of it with something called Robotaxis. This is where the car is able to drive itself and it can be used as a taxi. I'll come back to why it's an advantage in a moment, particularly with prices, but that's what he was talking about. He was also talking about what we get used to, and he used the analogy of a lift. These are the original Otis lifts in something like the Empire State Building, and a lot of the films you see, Cary Grant and the likes, and you go into the lift and there was always a liftman there who had the lever and the clutch to operate, and he physically operated the lift. So you would get in, he would physically close the doors, and he would then engage the clutch and the lift would shoot up, and when it got to the floor he'd slow it down, then stop it at the right place. He physically controlled the lift. He was the man in charge. What do we do now in a lift? You go into a lift, you never see anyone in there pressing buttons because we're quite capable of pressing the buttons ourselves. We get into a lift, we walk up to the lift, the doors open, we get in, we press the button for the floor we want, the doors close automatically, takes us up there, lets us out. Elon did say if you ever saw someone in a lift with that lever, the clutch, actually operating it, you'd think, what on earth is going on? Haven't we moved past that? And that's what he says is happening to cars. We're moving past what we've been used to for so long. And there's a lovely quote, I do highlight these, and what he said was, it really goes to the heart of everything. He says, the future should look like the future. And I thought that was such a simple statement, but everybody's out there, all these legacy autos clinging on to the past, clinging on to their cars, clinging on to the petrol motors, clinging on to the exhaust emissions, clinging on to outdated technology. And what we really need is a future that looks like the future. We need something different. We need a society that heads towards the future. I just found it really interesting that was one of the things that I took away from it. So what he was talking about then was, what can we do with them? So if you can, for example, for the first thing, get full self-driving working, and I'm not making any promises about when it's going to work, but if you can get full self-driving working, then what it means is while you're using it for those 10 hours a week, you don't even have to be awake. You could get in, go to sleep, and the car will happily drive itself. That's the level of autonomy that we want. If you do that, he said, getting into a car will be just like getting onto a bus or a train or a plane. You don't worry about who's driving. You just sit in the compartment and the vehicle takes you to wherever you're going. And it's such a simple concept. Why do we sit there hour after hour, holding the steering wheel, foot on the pedal, looking alert every second of the journey? It's so outdated. We're not there yet with full self-driving, not yet, but that's where we want to be. This is the future. So they were talking about if you look at taxis, the biggest cost of a taxi is the driver's wage. It costs, they reckon, about £1 a mile to run a car. This is according to the RAC figures. So if you look at the cost of the car, depreciation, servicing, repairs, tyres, fuel, whether it's electric or petrol, everything, that comes to about £1 a mile. So you've got to ask yourself why, when you're coming from Heathrow to the centre of London, which is a journey of about 15 miles, it costs you 50 or 60 quid. And the answer is, it's the driver's wages. Now, if you could have that same car, which cost £1 a mile, but you didn't have a driver in it, you could rent that out at a little over £1 a mile, and that would now be profitable. But of course, that £1 a mile is for a petrol car. If you look at an EV, it's got a lot of things going for it, particularly if you've got access to cheap electricity or free electricity from photovoltaic cells into storage batteries. So you've got the ability there to cut the cost of £1 a mile down quite dramatically. And the figure he quoted, he says, in LA, for example, a bus ride is roughly $1 a mile. He believes that you can get the cost of the Robotaxi down below £30,000 to buy one, so it's cheaper than a London taxi. And he also believes that they will be profitable at about 20 cents per mile. 20 cents. That's the equivalent of about 20 pence. Round figures, I know it's less than that, but say 20 pence. So can you imagine, for example, I'm on holiday at the moment, I went out to the airport, it's a 40-mile journey. Can you imagine? I actually got a quote from the taxi driver, it's £90 each way. £90 each way. Crazy sum of money for £90 for 40 miles. That's £2 something, £2.25 a mile. Crazy figure. Can you imagine if there was a Robotaxi with no driver and that pulled up and it was 20 pence a mile and it cost me £8 to go to the airport, dropped me off right outside the airport and then shot off to go and pick someone else? £8 as against 90 quid. It doesn't bear thinking about, and that there's an awful lot of people who say they'll never get into a driverless taxi. When you've got two taxis at Heathrow Airport and you want to go to central London and one's offering to charge you £3 and the other one's 50 quid, I'm going to bet some people will go, oh, sod it, I'll take the driverless one. So that's it. So what he went on to say was, what about Uber drivers? Because they're going to be out of a job because they have to charge for their wages as well. But he said what you need is something like an Uber driver is to have he called it a flock of Robotaxis, maybe 5 or 10 Robotaxis. You don't need to sit in any of them. You could, if you got the money, you could buy 10 Robotaxis and you could just rent them out and you would be overall in charge of making sure they're looked after and serviced and repaired or whatever it was. So a taxi driver in the future might run 3, 5 or 10 taxis himself or herself as a business, and that's really important. So that's the beauty of it. The reason it's very exciting is that the Tesla cars, every Tesla car after about 2016, 2017 is capable of full self-driving. So people often say Uber is going to wipe the floor with Tesla. Yeah, Uber, they have to buy a car first of all, then they have to kit it out with about £50,000 worth of sensors, and only then they have to program it and bring it up to date and everything else and load all the maps and everything. And so that is a massive investment. You're looking at £150,000 investment per car. Tesla's got an advantage. There's an awful lot of people out there, me included, whose car sits outside for 158 hours a week. If that car could be turned into a Robotaxi, downloaded with full self-drive, and then go off and pick people up, absolutely brilliant. He did say he wasn't going to plug these things in. All the future cars, the Robotaxis and future cars, will have inductive charging, a bit like toothbrush or mobile phone on one of these pads. You just pull up, and when you park, your car charges. So you don't even have to stop for that. Obviously, there will be things like cameras inside, so if anyone trashes the inside or soils it in any way, that car can be instantly taken out of service. It can be handed over to a cleaning company on a contract, and of course the bill for that would go to the person who trashed it, because it would be filmed who actually did it. If a load of drunken yobs got in and started ripping it up, throwing up all over the place and doing worse, then whoever paid for the ride, they're going to get a bill for the cleaning. Simple as that. So it's not a major problem. So that's where we are at the moment. There's an awful lot more. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I did introduce the Robocab, and this one is a 20-seater. It's just it's driverless. There's no steering wheel, no pedals or anything. Designed for 20 people for a local bus or something like that. What fascinated me overall was that for the event they took over the Disney studios. It's a massive big film studios, and it's about 20 or 30 acres. This is a big area. This is not just a few hundred yards. If you want a car, you see them in the films driving around in these little buggies to get from one set to another. There's sometimes a mile or 2 miles between sets, between studios. So they're big distances. And what happened on the event was they had 50 cars there, 50 cars in this whole area, and they were running them as if it was a small town or village, and they were running them as robotaxis. Not a single one of those 50 cars had a driver in them. Some of them, Model 3s and Model Ys, and I believe a couple of Cybertrucks, did have steering wheels and pedals, but the vast majority of the cars in that area, 30 or 40 of them, had no steering wheel, no pedals, and they were picking people up and dropping them off on a regular basis. So an awful lot of reporters got to travel in a Robotaxi, just two of them, it's a two-seater, with no steering wheel, no pedals, and they would go off and they would put their own destination in. They could choose from a number of locations and put their own destination. So they had 50 cars operating in Disney studios, and not a single vehicle had a driver in them, and very few had a steering wheel or pedals. It's the future. So anyway, that's it. That's all for now. So there's an awful lot to come from this. I'm going to be looking into much more. I will be producing a lot more videos, but I just thought I'd get this one out to give you a taste of what's going on. The big event for me was the Optimus robots. Massive improvements in those, but I'm not going to go into those at this time. So thanks very much for watching. I'm Dave. If you've enjoyed this, please click the like button. Also, please subscribe. It does help the channel. And if you'd like to see more and help the channel more, then please have a look at our Patreon membership. There's a lot of extra benefits for becoming a Patreon member. So thanks very much. I'm Dave.